Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And today I'm going to go to Hollywood and talk about the murder of Bob Crane. He was Hogan's hero, you know, and his murder was in, June of 1978. So we're talking, that's 50 years ago. But it is considered an unsolved homicide. And there's a controversy over who could have done it. And what the motive was, and why this Hollywood star ended up getting bludgeoned to death in his bedroom. So I'm going to get into that. I'm going to bring up some issues which I see an awful lot of discussions about Bob Crane ignore, and I'll get to that in a minute. First, I just want to welcome everybody who is here in the chat room. This is a live show. Cauliflower just rolled in, and Caitlin just rolled in, and Kim just rolled in. And if you'd like to be in the chat room during the live shows, please do click the link below for Patreon. It's $5 a month, and there are 2 live shows a week, which you can participate in, and also the community. And but if you don't want to do that, please just subscribe to the channel because all of my videos are made public after the live is over. So you're not going to miss anything except hanging out and being able to participate. But you'll still see all the information. So please do that. Please subscribe to the channel. Now, let's go to Bob Crane. All right, Bob. I'm going to read you first the very short Wikipedia thing in case you have no clue who Bob Crane is, especially if you're not from the United States and you never watched Hogan's Heroes, or you just weren't into that. Actually, I know the show, but quite frankly, I don't really remember watching it. I do know who he is, and so I must be aware of it, but it wasn't a show I spent a lot of time watching, but it was a super popular television series and lasted for, I think, 6 years or something. So very popular. All right. So who was Bob? All right. This is what Bob Crane looks like regularly, and this is what he looked like in the show. He was an American actor, a drummer. He was a drummer, a radio personality, and a disc jockey, known for starring in the CBS sitcom Hogan's Heroes. He was a drummer from age 11 and began his entertainment career as a radio personality beginning in New York, later in Connecticut. Then he moved to Los Angeles, and he hosted the number 1 rated morning radio show. Very talented guy and very personable. And I'm going to bring up the whole personable thing in a bit. Then he moved into acting in the early 60s, and he got the lead role of Colonel Robert Hogan in Hogan's Heroes, which takes place in like a Nazi prison camp. And people thought, how is this going to be a comedy? But the Hogan's Heroes were people, they could have escaped, but they didn't, so they could get intel back to stop the Nazis. And Colonel Klink was the main, the commandant of the prison camp. He spent all his time making fun of him, so people loved it. They thought it was very humorous. He got 2 Emmy Award nominations. Crane's career declined after Hogan's Heroes, and the reason for the decline is twofold. One is, when you've been in a series for quite a while, you kind of get typecast. But then again, sometimes it's just hard to get work. And also, his personal life started intruding into his public persona. And a lot of the film people were like, and television people like, you're kind of creeping us out. And it's his sexcapades. And what I'm going to bring up to you with that is one of the reasons it was a downfall of his life. He became frustrated with the few roles that he was being offered and began performing in dinner theater. Then he returned to television with the NBC series The Bob Crane Show, but it got poor ratings and was canceled after 13 weeks. He went back to dinner theater, which made money, but you have to travel around, and of course your dinner theater is not like being on television. But that's what happens a lot of times. People don't always stay stars forever. But then he was found bludgeoned to death in his Scottsdale, Arizona apartment while on tour in June 1978 for a dinner theater production. And his friend, John Carpenter, was tried for the murder but was acquitted, and the case remained officially unsolved. Crane's previously uncontroversial public image suffered due to the suspicious nature of his death and and the revelations about his personal life after he died. So, and he was a real questionable fellow. Let's put it that way. All right, so let's look at, okay, just let me tell you some of the things I use to for my information. And this time, okay, really fascinating. I liked, this is autofocus. Uh, this is a movie that was basically based on the whole episode of what happened to him and his murder, his life, and then his murder. And it's very, very well done and brilliant acting. And let me tell you who's in it. Hold on a second. I had it in front of me, but then I moved it away. So let's see here. Hold on a second. All right. Autofocus. Let me just get you the stars of the show, because one of them I absolutely adore. So Greg Kinnear was playing Bob Crane, and I didn't know who he was, but my son said, "Oh my God, he's a great actor." So okay, and he was really good. The other person in there was William Dafoe, who plays the friend, John Carpenter, and he is creepy-ish. But what's fascinating to me, and why I think this is absolutely brilliant, is Dafoe, who has that look of being creepy and plays creepy characters, and it is going to be his friend who helps him with the sexual component of his life, which is the two of them get together and film women having sex with them. Dafoe, you got to, like, okay, that guy's creepy. But it turned out that the way the other actor played Bob Crane, he creeped me out far more. Why did he creep me out more? Because of how he was portrayed. Now, Bob Crane is considered a kind of an all-American looking fellow, a really nice young man, married, kids. He says he's a one-woman man, doesn't drink, no alcohol, no drugs, and this is all true. So people thought him as very clean cut, except that he really wasn't. And the way he shows him I thought it was very accurate in the movie, that he's a lot creepier, in my opinion, than the other guy. Why? Because he puts on this persona that he's such a likable, nice person. But in my opinion, he's a sex predator. And he got away with being a sex predator because he was famous. And he got killed, of course, got murdered. And then a lot of the information came out. But even after it came out, oddly enough, there's this weird belief or claim that he's still pretty much a nice guy. Let me read to you something from the book, which I want to point out the book right here. Okay, the book, this one, Who Killed Bob Crane? This is by John Hook. Excellent book, just excellent. Just the right amount of length. A lot of times some of these books just go on forever, and you're like so bored. Absolute perfect amount of length. Well put together. He has his theory at the end of the book, which I'm going to maybe read it to you just because I think he did a great job on it. And I don't want to just say, hey, this is my idea alone. No, I thought he came up. I don't know if he's getting the detective's theories or what, but I think it was pretty decent. And then there's this documentary called Murder in Scottsdale. I'll link all of that below. Excellent documentary as well. So it's a trifecta. I mean, I don't usually find this many things I like on a particular subject and think all of them are great, because I'm pretty vicious with my with my reviews. Excellent, all of them. But anyway, I want to point out to you from this book, we have a foreword by Bob Crane's son, Robert Crane Jr. And this I find just very interesting. He says, "My father loved the news." Oh, that's nice. He loved exposing injustice. Interesting. He has an issue with injustice, but apparently being a sex predator, and I'm going to explain why I think he is a sex predator. The things he did with women, he didn't consider it an injustice. All right. And what he saw is the great American ripoff. I don't know what that means. He trusted the anchors, hosts, and correspondents with the facts. Okay, fine. The man that my family loves. Now, he was Bob. This one is a son of the first wife, who he cheated on with the second wife, just to let you know. The man that my family loves is not the guy in the tabloids. Oh, no? Because as far as I know, the guy that got murdered was videotaping women having sex with him. A lot of them. He was using his position of power and fame to get these women to have sex with him. So I'm going to say maybe he is that guy in the tabloids. Yes, the Connecticut-born small-town boy, once a Catholic altar boy, loved women. No, he didn't love women. He loved screwing women. He loved family more. Well, oh, wait a minute. Okay. Why does he love family more? Because he played baseball and went to the swimming pool and went to the park and created comedic family home movies. This is the kind of thing we've heard about serial killers too. Dennis Rader, the daughter said, oh, he was a good father because they have compartmentalized their lives. He liked his children because his children were a representation of himself, and he spent time with them and enjoyed them. He enjoyed his wife too, but he was perfectly willing to cheat on his wife and do things that would eventually ruin his career and be embarrassment to his children, because guess what? He loved himself way more than he loved his family. So, son, I get that you want to love your daddy, but okay. Now, another interesting thing said here. All right. This is only a complaint I have about John Hook. I think he did the introduction here, and I'm bothered by this statement. He said this. Okay, so in 1949, he married his high school sweetheart, and Terzian. The couple lived seemingly typical suburban life and had 3 children together. From the outside, things appeared quite perfect. But Crane was struggling with a dark secret, a sexual addiction that would later consume him. Okay. Sexual addiction. You know, I've never been fond of the concept of sexual addiction. That you can't prevent yourself from having sex with all these people behind your wife's back. No, you can. It's as you choose to do that because it gives you that feeling of power and control. And if anybody knows, I've talked about power and control many times. That's part of a personality disorder. I mean, we all do like power and control in our lives, but when it gets to the point where you'll hurt everybody else and treat other human beings as just your tools for whatever your pleasure is, I'm going to say you have a personality disorder. So, yeah, it wasn't a sex addiction. It was possibly psychopathy. All right. As a celebrity grew, so did his access to women. Well, that's true. Anybody who's in, the limelight, anybody who's in Hollywood. We all know this from all the people that have been recently pulled in by the Me Too group. Hashtag Me Too, because these people can use the casting couch. He essentially used the casting couch, but in the same way, women would come to him and say, look, I have this audio tape. Would you listen to it? This is my voice. I'm singing. They wanted to get into the movies. They wanted to be the famous person. He used a casting couch like crazy. And he once said, I'm not going to pay any woman to have sex with me. So he wasn't paying prostitutes because he didn't think he should have to. He could use them because he would fool them into thinking they had some chance of stardom with him. So he used the casting couch like crazy. And interestingly enough, today the casting couch is considered horrific. But apparently when he was doing it, a lot of people go, oh whatever. It was, it was him. So it's okay. He's not such a bad guy. He's a sweet guy. No. He frequently strayed from his marriage and then he got divorced. Okay. But here's the comment that I think is fascinating. So he hooks up with this friend, this John Carpenter fellow who was really good with he worked for I think he worked for Sony. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But John Carpenter, here it is. Carpenter was a national service manager for Sony, and he knew how to use all the new equipment, the video, new photography, the new video stuff, just all breaking into the market. And for years, Crane was an amateur photographer, enjoyed taking still pictures of his sexual escapades with various women. The prospect of documenting his conquests on video became an obsession. So, and then Carpenter, this new friend of his, he had knowledge and access to the latest video equipment and made this all possible. The two struck up a fast friendship. With Crane's celebrity serving as a magnet, the two would pick up women, often while Crane was out on the road, performing in the dinner theaters. And in nearly every instance, so then they would get together and they would film their sexual encounters. And when you watch autofocus, you'll see this. It's so creepy. So like a woman would be giving him a blowjob and John Carpenter would be standing over him, filming downward, basically they're making porn films. Now they didn't sell them. They were private porn films, but they were porn films with themselves in them, But here's what I find interesting. In nearly every instance, the women knew they were being videotaped and eagerly agreed to it or just didn't care. Oh, really? Oh, really? And so the point about understanding the character of Bob Crane and his buddy John Carpenter is to understand how he ended up possibly being murdered. And there are two possibilities. One is his friend killed him. And the second one is some woman killed him because she got pissed off that he videotaped her without her permission. Those are the possibilities. Now, there's almost every one of these things that I've read kind of downplays that he's a sex predator. And I find that kind of repulsive. But there's this one article from Film Daily, which I thought was great. Bob Crane, America's darling or predatory sex criminal. Actor Bob Crane, known to be in Hogan's Heroes, blah, blah, blah. It says here, so was he a wolf in sheep's clothing? It turns out Bob Crane, the man, was not nearly as virtuous as Bob Crane, the celebrity. After his murder, details about Crane's lifestyle were unearthed by police investigators. These investigators recovered a trove of damning personal home videos in Crane's possession. Bob Crane and a buddy, a Sony Electronics executive named John Henry Carpenter, let's put a picture back up there, that's John Henry Carpenter, spent their free time picking up women in bars and videotaping their sexual encounters, both alone and together. So sometimes it was just the woman and Bob, or sometimes just a woman and John, but sometimes it was both guys and whatever woman. Yeah. While there was nothing explicitly illegal about this activity, if there was total permission, it is now believed some of these women were not aware they were on video. And there's a really interesting thing in the autofocus movie where she goes, the woman says, is that video camera on? He goes, oh, wait a minute, let me turn it off. And he clicks it, but he doesn't turn it off. Now, that's obviously, this is a dramatic effect. It's not proof that that's what actually happened. But in my opinion, considering how sleazy he is, and funny thing is, the police were asked whether he was a sleazy character. And he's like, no, I don't think so. No, this dude was a sleazebag. This guy was a sleazebag. They're both sleazy as hell. Just absolutely sleazy. Using the casting couch, taking advantage of women who were, wanted to get into the business, who were enthralled by the celebrity. I don't believe for a minute. Hold on a second. Sorry. I don't believe for a minute that every woman, God bless, that's a lot of women, because he had a huge, huge book of photos and he had a huge amount of videotapes. I don't believe that every single one of those women willingly was filmed and photographed and filmed. Now, I will say this. Do I think more women are willing to be filmed, photographed from the chest up? Kind of like, just the boob thing. Because a lot of women get into that because they think they're really pretty and cute. They're not so bent out of shape about a Playboy style picture. It's like, oh, he's famous and he wants to take a big picture. I believe that. But that all these women would have no problem being a part of his porn film? Wow. I disagree. Okay, now this is... So anyway, it goes on here. It's now believed that some of these women were not aware they were on video. All right. And why? What was also happening? They were being plied with a lot of liquor. I don't hear about any drugs, but a lot of liquor. So that we don't know how drunk these women were. We don't know if they were half out of it. We don't know. But this guy, sorry. Everybody's like, oh my God, Bob Crane was murdered. I really don't give a crap. Tell you the truth. To me, he's a sexual predator, and what he got, oh well. That's my viewpoint on it. Now, did he do it, or did somebody else do it? This is what I'm going to get into now, as far as what happened, as far as the crime goes. So what we know is he's a sleazebag, in my opinion, a sex predator, and he may be a psychopath. He cheated on his wives, even lied about being one woman man. He's a complete liar. It's well, I think the second wife he told that he wanted a more open lifestyle, but there was a lot of lying going on. And to the women that he was picking up, I don't know what he told them. And so we'll never know all of that because a lot of the women won't come forward because it is embarrassing, so don't know. But people do not understand about actors. It's an act. I just want to let you know, when you see an actor, it's an act. Whatever character he's playing is an act, whether he's a good guy, and you think, oh my God, he's the nicest guy in the world. He's so romantic. Oh, I can't wait to meet him. Or he's a bad guy, and you're thinking, oh my God, he's so scary. It's an act. It's 100% an act. So that is not the real person. And a lot of the time, an actor presenting to the public isn't a real person either, because he's presenting to the media. He's got to play his part as a famous actor or actress, whatever you are. So the real person is you do not see, and understand that if you can act well enough to be in a major series, you can act well enough to be a psychopath and lie about your entire life. So I think people's concept that this is a nice guy, yeah, not so much. So I'm going to check your comments. I'm going to get into the actual crime. Okay, sorry, my nose is itching today. All right. Wait a minute. Cauliflower says, I struggle to understand how children don't see the truth of who their parents are when confronted with strong evidence, because they just don't want to. I mean, they want to have that illusion. They want to have that parent that maybe they never really had, but they want that parent. Or maybe they themselves have not experienced the negative part of their parent. So they're just going to focus on the good side. I kind of get it, why they're doing that. But that's just the way humans are. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. I'm going backwards in some of your comments here. Yeah. Okay. This is a point. Sarah's correct. Oh my God, what is wrong with my nose? Oh, sorry. Sarah says crimes are bad enough. Recording it is next level, and this is what I find really fascinating because good old Harvey, Bill Cosby, who's the latest? Diddy. People like, oh, they used the casting couch to get the women in bed with them, and of course, there's claims that they were raped, which some of them are not really well supported. But you get a guy here, and for some reason, what he does is okay, because he not only has sex with these women, we don't know if he, quote, raped any of them, or they didn't think he was going to do what he did, but he did it anyway. And then he filmed it and kept it in his private collection. Actually, he showed a lot of these pictures to people too. So, these women, that's why one of the theories is that a woman could have killed him, or a woman's husband could have killed him, because he kept all this crap that, could expose the woman having sex with him, doing certain acts that might be a little too embarrassing and humiliating. So there's a theory that, hey, we don't know who actually did him in, because he probably pissed off a lot of people. And some of these women who slept with him in order to get ahead in Hollywood, and he didn't give a crap about them, and he didn't listen to their vocals on the tape they gave him. He was very cold-blooded about this. He could care less about what they wanted. He even said that he could care. He was using them, and they weren't getting anywhere. So, after they put out to him, maybe to his buddy too, and then they didn't even get it. He didn't pay attention to them after the moment was over. You're going to have some pissed off women, and you may have some pissed off husbands. So, yeah. So pretty sad. I don't know if you're saying my name. Oh, porn movies. Were you there yourself? Who's involved in porn movies? I was in Hollywood, in case you all didn't know. I was in Hollywood for a year. I did not participate in the casting couch. I was offered Penthouse and I was offered a movie called Charlie's Angels, and they weren't so angelic in that movie, but we are supposed to film in Paris. That's what they told me. I turned all of that down. You're not going to find me in Penthouse or in there's any porn movie, or on the casting couch. I refused everything. I made that deal before I even went there. I said, I'm going to go for a year, and I'm not going to do that. I never got any work. I mean, I wasn't all that talented either, quite frankly. It's just that I was at that time young and pretty, had great legs, but so did a lot of other girls, and those girls were sleeping with guys like this, and I wasn't. So, so I gave up and went back to college. But that's the way it works, and that's Hollywood for you. It's just pretty shabby. Power and control, 100%. That's what they're into. Oh, it wasn't about me. Oh, good. No, Nancy Grace. Nancy Grace did not require me to sleep with her. This is true. I did Nancy Grace without having to go through the casting couch. I mean, the funny thing about it all was that by the time I got actually back into television work, I was in my 40s and I was doing criminal profiling because a couple of decades had passed, and I was able to actually work in television for 15 years without any casting couch, because by then it was pretty much too old for it, and they wanted me as a criminal profiler, not as an actress. So yeah, so it helps. Okay, let's go to the crime. All right, so very fascinating crime scene. Okay, let me pull up a couple pictures of the crime itself. So essentially, let me go to the book, because I want to read you. He talks about the last moments, and so who was with whom and what was going on. Okay, so hold on a second, just knock my book off here. Okay, so going to the back of this guy's book, what actually happened. All right, now the last time Bob Crane was seen alive was roughly 2:30 a.m. on the morning of June 29th, 1978, when Carolyn Barr, or Bear, I don't know how to pronounce her name, B-A-A-R-E, refused his advances and attempts to take her home. As Bear drove away from the parking lot of the Safari Hotel, it was the last time she would see him. So he did not get lucky that night. Crane walked to his car and made the 1-minute drive to his apartment at the Winfield complex down the street. At roughly the same time, John Carpenter was striking out with his date that night. It was not a good night. I mean, for whatever reason, he struck out too with Carol Newell. He had just dropped her off at her apartment 5 minutes away. Okay, so they're very close by. Now, what was interesting about this is you have to understand this guy. What happened was, because he had all this great knowledge of how to do the camera work and all these new pieces of equipment and the video stuff, he just loved this guy for a buddy. And he was basically his wingman, and they would go into places and he would go, hey, you know who I'm with? I'm with Bob Crane. And then Bob Crane would get the women, and then he would get what he called the leftovers. Like he got the good looking one and he got the friend, but whatever, they both got a lot of sex, and they got a lot of videos, and they got a lot of photos and all that kind of thing. So this just went on for a really, really long time. We're talking about, I think it was almost a decade. It was a long time that they did this crap. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong about how long. But supposedly about the time that he got murdered, they had told him, the producers and different people, it's like, dude, the information about you is getting out that you're a scumbag. You keep showing pictures of these women you're betting, and it's gross and disgusting, and you're ruining your look. You're supposed to be the all-American, handsome, nice young man, and you're kind of creepy, and your people don't want to hire you. So you need to stop what you're doing. You need to get rid of this guy, clean up your act, and so you can get back into Hollywood. Supposedly, he decided that he was becoming a liability and was going to dump him. Now, mind you, they did all kinds of travel together. They were like best buddies. And at this point, he was going to get rid of him. This is a story. He was going to get rid of him because he was going to continue to mess up his career. And he thought he could fly alone now, because now he had equipment he could do on his own. You could set a timer and all that kind of stuff now, and you could get really good videos. So he thought, okay, maybe I don't need this. Maybe the guy he became irritating to him. He started saying, well, this guy's really annoying because it's like, he thinks he's like doing good things for me, but I'm really doing good things for him. So both of them, I think, have a personality disorder. So that's the problem. Eventually, when it doesn't work out, somebody's going to get rid of somebody. So he decided supposedly to get rid of him. So they were in Arizona together, but normally he would stay with him. And this time he stayed at a hotel down the street, and he was supposedly telling him, this is it. I'm going to drive you to the airport in the morning. After they went out for their night out and things didn't go well, both of them didn't get laid, didn't get any photos or videos. Supposedly he told him, well, okay, I'm going to go home and go to sleep. You go and, I'll pick you up in the morning and take you to the airport. So this is supposed to be kind of the big goodbye. Now, how much of this is absolutely accurate, we will never know. But that's the story that supposedly happened. And there's some, like he told some people that he was going to get rid of them and all that stuff. And this has been his guy for the longest time that brought him that kind of life that he wanted, because he wasn't that most handsome fellow, and he wasn't famous. So the reason he got what he got was because of him. And on the other hand, he got what he wanted from getting all the video equipment and all that fancy stuff because of him. But now he became, not so important anymore. He was, he could just chop him off, and he would still be okay, but he would not. So that's the theory anyway. So they both fail to get anybody. He goes to the hotel. He goes to his apartment. Now, Carpenter tells the police that upon returning to room number 206 at the Sunburst Hotel, he called Crane to see how he was doing. While this is possible, I do not believe his story. Calling Crane at that hour when he might be in the midst of seducing a woman, because he did not know he was going home alone, seemed a little. So the author here is saying, I don't quite buy that, because it seems like he wouldn't, he'd know he was like probably doing something with somebody, and he's going to see him in the morning anyway. So, he'd just go to bed, But he claims he called him. And also Carpenter, Crane, if he was like sick of him, and he could just not bother with him. He could just not answer the phone, or he could just pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm tired of going to bed, pick you up in the morning. And I think that's a very accurate, reasonable statement. What the author says is that he believes, and again, the author, I don't know if these are all his own theories or this is the police theories, but he says he believes that after Carpenter struck out and dropped off the girl that didn't sleep with him, he went over to his apartment, drove over there. And I think that is probably correct. John Carpenter told police that during his phone call with Bob Crane, so now this is a while back, so the tracing of the phone call, knowing the phone call was actually made. I can't quite remember what happened in the 70s, but I don't know if there was any logging of phone calls, because I don't think there were, so you don't actually know if he called or he didn't call. So he said he called Bob Crane, and this is what Bob Crane told him. Bob explained he struck out with Carolyn, and he said Crane told him he was, quote, standing in his boxer shorts, editing Saturday Night Fever for his son, Scotty. But he'd already talked to his estranged wife and said he'd finished the editing. He had this big argument. People actually heard the argument with his wife. So he was home and people heard him screaming and yelling. But he had already finished editing this thing for his son. And he told him he was standing there in his boxer shorts. Now, I know they shared a lot of crap together, but why he would bother to tell him he's in his boxer shorts doesn't make a lot of sense to me. He was found in his boxer shorts, dead, by the way, in his bed, in his boxer shorts. And one of the things that happens a lot of times when people commit a crime is they do remember the last picture of them. And so if he saw him in his boxer shorts, that is in his head when he's telling this story. That, oh, he said he was in his boxer shorts. He had no reason to mention that. He could just simply say, hey, I'm working on this thing. Why would he say, I'm standing here in my boxer shorts working? Really? I mean, could it have happened? Yes, but is it likely? No. So that he would have said that is a little off, and the police thought it was off, and the author thinks it's off. I think it's off. I don't think the phone call happened, and neither does the police or the author. The phone call never happened. Why? Because he didn't call him. He went over to his house. He was in his house, and he saw him in his boxer shorts. Why was he in his boxer shorts? Because instead of walking around nude, because he slept nude, he always slept naked, he put on boxer shorts because somebody was in the house with him. Now, his friend was there. Maybe, since they spent a lot of time masturbating together, I mean, sitting in the chairs looking at videos, masturbating. So they're creepy dudes doing stuff in front of each other. They weren't actually lovers or anything, because apparently one time, well, at least in the autofocus thing, supposedly during a threesome, he like touched his butt or something. He got freaked out. So there's no evidence that they had any kind of romantic relationship or sexual relationship, but they didn't seem to have a problem performing in front of each other. So they put on a pair of boxer shorts, and that, in his case, because going to hang around talking to him makes sense. And that's what the belief is by the police and the author and myself, that he did go drive over to his house, which is not unlikely for him, and then going, hey, hey, what's going on? Anyway, so now he's over at the house. It says here, according to his wife, Patty, and his son, Robert, he would only wear boxers when someone else was around. At autopsy, Crane had semen on his right thigh and abdomen. I suspect after striking out with Carolyn Bear, he probably masturbated when he returned to his apartment, which he did a whole lot of because he had all those photos and videos, right? Either in bed or while watching some of his porn videotapes in the living room. When he heard the knock at the door, because this is an important thing, he was found dead in his bed. Let me show you okay, there he is. He was murdered while he was sleeping, laying there with this, you lay on your side, a curl up fetal position, you put your hands under your head. He was actually found in that position. He was not awake when he was murdered. He's in that, there he is, he's in his bed. He's got his boxer shorts on, his semen on his thigh, but he's all curled up, gone to sleep. But when he was beat, he's hit twice in the head with a heavy object, and then strangled or almost strangled with a wire, which I'll get into in a minute. So the author theorizes that they heard a knock at the door. He didn't have time to thoroughly clean up. Okay, so he's just like, whatever he's doing, he's like, oh, somebody's at the door, he puts his pants on, he puts his shorts on, he goes to the door. And only reason he opened up the door is because he knows who's there, this guy. And there was no sign of a break-in. He religiously put on these couple locks on the front door and everything. He locked up the place. So there was no sign of a break-in, and nobody had an extra key. So the person who killed him, there's only two possibilities. One was he let them in because he knew who they were. And then he actually got in bed and went to sleep with that person still in the apartment. He had to trust them to a relative level. The second theory is that somebody broke into the apartment, but there's no evidence of that. And one of the reasons that the police never believed anybody else broke in was because the place was completely dark. And remember, the guy's sleeping, right? And the place is, if you look about the place, like this, he's got a lot of crap around this place. I mean, there's garbage kind of stuff everywhere. And let me show you his house. Okay, if you come in that door on the left, the victim's bedroom is way back there. You have to go through the house. Now, if you go straight down the hall, know exactly where he's sleeping. Why would you know that? Why would you not go in someplace else? You have to, and then you have to, there's a lot of crap around, and nothing was disturbed. Not one thing was disturbed in that house. Nothing. Nothing was moved. Nothing was rummaged through. So you have another picture here. So this stuff was all over the tables. There's, in the bathroom, there was like, I think this was like a enlarger. He was doing enlarging of pictures. This actually, the stuff that belonged to John Carpenter, like Crane set it out because he's going to say, hey, when I go pick John up, I got to remember to get him his shorts some shorts he had, and some stuff. I think it was a DVD or something. I don't remember what it was. I've got to take that back to him. Everything was where it would be. So if the place was dark, somebody had to break in, get through the place without disturbing anything, to go to his back bedroom and bludgeon him. And then the question would be, why? Now, the theory that a woman did it, so he might let a woman in, but then he'd have to actually go to sleep while she's not there's no evidence a woman was in his bed or anything. It looked like he went to sleep alone. So he would have to have gone to sleep, and then she decided she was going to bludgeon him. And, well, I guess because he took pictures of her. Okay. Some people say, well, it might have been a woman's husband that came in. Well, if he came in, there was nothing taken. I mean, I'll take this back. John Carpenter claimed that there was his book of photos that wasn't there anymore. Like, hey, police, look at this. Somebody might have taken that book of photos. But if you thought your wife's photo was around here and that guy's dead, I'd be turning on a light and looking to see if a picture was there, a picture was there, a picture. I'd be ripping that place apart. Nothing was touched. No robbery. Nothing rifled through. No sign of breaking and entering. That's why the police thought John Carpenter was involved, because they were breaking up. They were breaking up, and he was probably very pissed that he was going to be dumped by this guy, and was very angry. He went over there. Now the question is, when he went over there, one of the things we don't know is when he went. If he went over, I'll say if, because there's no proof. There's not absolute proof he was in the actual apartment. That's the problem. Now, mind you, he spent a lot of time in that apartment, so his fingerprints everywhere. It doesn't really make any difference. There were a couple of blood drops, like somebody opened the curtains to look out, like after he was murdered, to look out to see if it was safe to go out in the parking lot and jump in the car and leave. But that was his blood. So, and the way he was killed wouldn't necessarily mean he got injured in any way, because he was sleeping. You take somebody and go bang, bang over there, you're not getting injured. It's his blood, not your blood. So they couldn't prove he was in the apartment, which was one of the big problems. But they suspected him because they were breaking up. He was dumping him. And then the other thing was that apparently when he never comes to pick him up, right? To take him to the airport. He just goes on his own. He dumps off his rental car. He goes back to California, and he makes these phone calls. Makes phone calls to the son and says, "Hey, here's Dad around?" And it's like, what? And then he calls the apartment, and a woman answers the phone. She hands it off to the police, and the police say, this is police. And he's like, "Yeah, is Bob there?" Somebody told me the police was in my best friend's apartment. I go, "What the heck? What's going on there? What's going on?" He never asked. And he made a whole bunch of calls that made them suspicious that he was trying to present himself as having an alibi and not knowing what happened. And so he became the suspect right away. There's no question about it. And the other thing was interesting about the case was that, first of all, there was, again, no disturbance here. This is a tripod he had, and he had two of them. And one was there and one was missing. And this is what they believe he was hit over the head with twice with this tripod. Bang, bang. And there was an actual blood on. I'm not showing any crime scene photos. I don't do that during the show because YouTube will not like it. But if you go to any of the links below, I'll put the link of, they'll have all the crime scene photos. You can go see it. But there were these blood on the he's lying in bed like this, and then there's these couple of blood stains which match. Can't do it. I can't do that here. Maybe this way. Yeah, there we go. That match. If you put them on top, they match the exact angles. But this was missing, and never found. Why would if a guy broke into the apartment or somebody came in the apartment and just grabbed anything to hit him with, they probably would leave it there. Why would the person take it? Well, then again, they didn't need to, but maybe they didn't want the weapon. Maybe they wanted the police to believe somebody brought a weapon and left with a weapon. Who knows? We're not talking about an experienced killer. So supposedly he was hit with this twice. He was never woke up. He died in his sleep because he hit him so hard that he just, he was still sitting there like this. And then you wonder why the guy cut the, the cord and then put it around his neck. And the theory there was that he was gurgling a little, and it's like, and he was going to strangle him, but then he realized he didn't really need to. So it really wasn't a tight strangulation. It was just like, oh, I got to shut this guy up, make sure he's dead. And then he didn't really need to. But that was it. And then the guy left. So the police were all over him as being likely the guy who did it. So let me read a little bit more from this. The author, Crane let John into the apartment. That's what he thinks. No sign of forced entry. Let's see. He's talking about the possible other choices, which I just discussed. Here's an interesting thing for me. One of the things he says, somebody broke into the apartment, that John was a very light sleeper. And so he would probably woken up, a very light sleeper, and he didn't, because there's a lot of people would make noise breaking in one way or the other and rummaging through the apartment or trying to get down the hall. So it says here, because the time of death was likely between 3 and 3:30 in the morning, John Carpenter and Bob Crane likely talked for a very short time. Crane probably told me he wanted to get some sleep before driving to the airport, and he's like, okay, just go ahead and go to sleep. I'll just hang out here, and you can take me to the airport in the morning. That's my guess. Now, when you talk about a possible somebody else besides him, okay, so supposedly, according to him, he's awake at whatever time in the morning he's awake on. According to a possibility, he's over there talking to him, he would also be awake. That somebody would pick that moment in time to get in there, sneak in there, kill him, and sneak out. When he might be in there with somebody, it's pretty risky, and again, it would have to be somebody he knew. And they came up with nobody else. Okay, so, and then I said all the strange behavior of him afterwards, calling around and like pretending he didn't know what happened to him and all that stuff. Unlikely. And using the tripod, that's something he would be very comfortable with. So now, here, and the theory is that after he whacked him with the tripod, that he probably either washed it off or tried to put a towel around it or something and took it with him and threw it away someplace. And because the tripod was missing, why he took it, I don't know. Maybe he thought his fingerprints were on it. Maybe he thought it would be suspicious if a tripod was used to kill him and they think it was him. I have no idea, because again, we're talking about this. If it was him, he wasn't exactly like a seasoned killer or anything. So now, the problem they had was all the circumstantial evidence puts him in the picture, but they didn't have the physical evidence. Now so I'll get to what the physical evidence was. He drove away in the car. He had a rental car, and where's the rental car? Here we go. Okay. So his rental car, and everything looked pretty fine about the rental car, except when they opened up the passenger side, they found there was a number of blood streaks on the door, which was pretty weird. The rental car was basically a fairly new rental car. I think it had like a few hundred miles on it. So it hadn't been used extensively before him. After he dumped it off, it did go through a few different people's hands. He said there was a problem with it, and then it was towed. And so lots of people did touch the rental car after the fact. The police went, and they're trying to find out about this blood smears in here. Now, I'll show you so there clearly were some. Now, this is one of the blood smears that came back. That at the time they didn't have DNA, so it wasn't all that important. But this one came back, and this is in some of the upholstery part, so kind of soaked in a little bit. They couldn't get DNA back then, but they could get blood type. Okay, the blood type came back to the same blood type as Bob Crane, which was only like, I think, 9% of the population. Let me go. Hold on a second here. I just want to pull up the DNA results. By the way, I'll link this below. This is actually when years later they had, this is a sit down. The guy with the glasses is Bob Crane's son. I forgot who everybody else was, but the lawyer for Carpenter is there, and the author is there, I think, and a bunch of other people. And they revealed the actual DNA results, and I'm going to tell you what they are. But at the time, they didn't have DNA, so they had only blood type. Now, what was interesting about the blood type? Hold on, let me find my spot here. Okay, DNA. All right. So Bob Crane's blood type was B. What is it? B negative? Where is it? So they took it's a part. Where the heck is it? Hello. Where's this blood type? Hold on a second. Type B. Okay. He had. What are the okay? Crane's rare blood type, type B, found in only 1 out of 10 people. Okay, so this is where they found his blood type that matched him. This, what they couldn't get anything out of. This was supposedly a piece of brain tissue, which got lost or never taken. And it was like a little piece of brain, looked like brain tissue with a hair coming out of it. Well, since he was hit on the head twice, not unlikely that that could be stuck to the tripod and then brought to the car. They opened up the passenger car door, dumped it in there, and there was a little bit of blood and this stuck on it, and it touched the car door as he was driving around. That's sort of the theory on that. Now, DNA is done later, way later. DNA is done. This was years later. First of all, they did take him to John Carpenter was taken to court eventually, and he was found not guilty. The foreman of the jury said, yeah, we thought he was guilty. We absolutely thought he was guilty. Based on all the circumstantial evidence, we thought this guy was guilty, but we just felt we didn't have any physical evidence to prove he was in that place and inside the apartment. And I don't disagree with their conclusion. Circumstantial evidence can be very powerful, and this was good, but not so conclusive that you could say there's no way in God's earth it wasn't him. I mean, there's nobody else I think it could be, but I understand that there's circumstantial evidence which is so overwhelming that, regardless of whether you have any physical evidence or not, they did it. Okay, this was like he should be the guy who did it. We don't have any proof he went to the apartment, but somebody let a guy in that they knew. They went to sleep when the guy was there. The guy had there was a motive there, and that everything that John Carpenter did after the fact also was weird as heck. So, yes, does it look like it's nobody but him? Yes. Do I think it's nobody but him? I think it's him. Yes, as most people do. However, the DNA comes back because they do the DNA. When did they do the DNA? They do the DNA in. Hold on a second, let me find it when they did the DNA. So in other words, they took him to court eventually, but it just wasn't good enough. All right, so they let him go. So they went and did the DNA. Wait a minute, when did they do it? It was pretty amazing that they shoot, now I can't find where it is. All right, hold on a second. Retesting the DNA. All right. Monday, January 4th. That does not help me. Give me the date that they did this. I'm gonna have to look someplace else for the actual date that they did. Let me go back to good old Wikipedia just so I can get that. Okay, so the trial was in 1994. So here's what happened. 1978 was a homicide. The crime scene yielded few clues. No evidence was found of forced entry. Nothing of value was missing. They definitely believed it was Carpenter. Several blood smears are found that matched Crane's blood type, but no one else of that blood type was known to have been in the car, including Carpenter. Now, I'll just stop here and point this out. Why is there blood in Carpenter's car? Because very few people had it before. So you would think that if you're going to rent out a car and there's some blood marks on the passenger's door, you think somebody would see it when they're detailing the car before they give it back out. I was like, whoa, there's blood in this car. You'd think they would notice that. After the car was picked up, supposedly a number of people dealt with it, but they didn't seem to pay much attention either, it seems. But so the blood itself, that it's from somebody else, is unlikely. What's weird about it is that there's blood in his car. I mean, he's the only one that had it, and there's blood in his car. If it's not, if somebody said, well, if it's not Bob Crane's blood, then that kills the whole concept. Well, no, it doesn't, because if it's not his blood, whose blood is it anyway? And somebody else didn't kill Bob Crane and jump in Carpenter's car, so that makes no sense whatsoever. So if somebody else killed Bob Crane, they'd have blood someplace else, not in Carpenter's car. So where the heck is the blood in Carpenter's car? That is the problem. Okay, so anyway, they thought it was him. In 1990, Scottsdale Police Investigator Barry Vassell and Maricopa County Attorney Office Investigator Jim Raines re-examined the evidence from 1978. So we're talking about 12 years later. No, 22 years later. No, 12. No, sorry, it's 12 years later. And they persuaded the county attorney to reopen the case. DNA testing was inconclusive on the blood found in Carpenter's rental car, but Raines did discover an evidence photograph of the car's interior that appeared to show a piece of brain tissue. The actual tissue samples recovered from the car had been lost, but they ruled that this evidence was admissible. So they had the blood type of Bob in the car. They had brain tissue, which it's a picture. So I guess some people thought, well, I don't know if I can believe the picture, but if it is brain tissue, it's got to be Bob Crane's brain. I mean, who else's brain tissue is going to be rolling around in the car? So, and nobody else, and John Carpenter says nobody else touched his car but him. So it wasn't like he lent his car to somebody and that other person killed Bob. So, yeah. So they ruled, and they went to the trial. And during the trial, Crane's son, Scotty, different one, said that he repeatedly expressed a desire to terminate his friendship with Carpenter in the weeks before his death. He said that Carpenter had become a hanger-on and a nuisance to the point of being obnoxious. My dad expressed he just didn't need Carpenter's kind of hanging around him anymore. So Scotty further testified that Crane had called Carpenter the night before the murder to end their friendship. And then, of course, the attorneys attacked this. This is circumstantial, blah, blah, blah. So they pointed out Crane had been videotaped and photographed in sexual relations with many numerous women, implying that any one of them might have been the killer. I'm going to pretty much say that it's very unlikely a woman came in and bludgeoned him with the tripod and then cut a cord and put it around his neck. I'm just going to say, as a profiler, that's pretty rare. Yeah. So, other potential suspects proposed by Carpenter's attorneys included angry husbands and boyfriends of the women, and an actor who had sworn vengeance after a violent argument with Crane several months earlier in Texas. Again, we look at what happened right before this all happened. And what happened right before was that he was telling Carpenter to disappear. All right. Okay, so he was acquitted. And he maintained his innocence until his death in 1998. After the trial, Robert, the one who thinks his dad is a wonderful guy and just a family man, he speculated publicly that Patricia Olson might have had a role in instigating the crime. That's the second wife, because she ended up with all the money. But she had a solid alibi. So unless she hired a killer, yeah. And then the killer would have to break into the house and all that kind of stuff. And he wouldn't be sleeping there like that. Okay, now the later testing was in 2016. So now, okay, 2016. Okay, so 1994 was the actual trial. 2016, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office permitted Phoenix television reporter John Hook. That's the guy. Okay, let's just go back and say we know who everybody is. John Hook is the good book I just read to you from. They allowed him to submit the 1978 blood samples from Carpenter's rental car for retesting using a more advanced DNA technique. Now, this is where they did the big reveal. It was kind of like, who's your daddy? But this was, who's your DNA? So instead of who's your daddy? And they revealed it and freaked everybody out because it wasn't what they expected. What happened was they found that there were, now remember where the only place that really had any substantial blood enough to test anything was where we're at. Okay, that spot. I think this is a spot, if I'm wrong. But a lot of them things were on top, on a plasticky, I don't know what you call it, vinyl-y stuff. And I don't know whether anybody tried to wipe anything down. It doesn't appear that way. But how it's a little confusing. And mind you, we're talking 1970s when they took samples of this crap, and it's been sitting around for like 40 freaking years. God knows what's happening to it. And so that's one of the big problems with this whole thing. But the only thing that really looked like it, maybe they're soaked in when they took it. Maybe those had better DNA. That's why they got the blood type out of this spot. At least that's what I think. So anyway, they identified this, one from an unknown male and the other two degraded to reach a conclusion. And so they were hoping that if this proved to be Bob's blood, 100%, they would know that John Carpenter killed Bob. But because they didn't prove that it was Bob's blood, there was some unknown male DNA rolling around there and some other inconclusive crap that John Carpenter's attorney goes, see, it's not Bob's blood, therefore John Carpenter didn't do anything. But still, there's blood in John Carpenter's car, which is unaccounted for. And everything points to John Carpenter. So get out of here. I still believe that it's probably is blood from the scene. Now, what would be the DNA issue here? And the big problem with the DNA issue is, and I'm going to read from the book for this because, again, I think John Hook did a good job. And hold on a second. Let me pull this last chapter up here on his, that's the testing the DNA. Okay. He comes up with some reasonable thoughts on it. He says, he hoped that modern DNA science would solve the case and identify the killer. But he says a type B blood was found in Carpenter's rental car the day after the murder. If you believe, as I do, that the red speck photographed in Carpenter's car was tissue from Bob Crane's skull, then these two things alone overwhelmingly point to Carpenter's guilt. What are the odds that blood matching Crane's rare blood type B, found in only 1 out of 10 people, and tissue we found in the car? Let's just even take away the tissue. What are the chances of this? It is that type of blood, and only 1 out of 10 people have it. What are the chances that some other killer, I don't even understand how this would even work, some other person's blood, 1 out of 10 people, got in the blood in the car? I mean, it just doesn't even make sense. So Carpenter was, by his own admission, the last person to talk to Crane. If the blood is not from Bob Crane, you have to believe that type B blood somehow deposited in Carpenter's rental car by somebody else right around the same time as the murder. I mean, the very same day, very same hours. Like right at the time he was murdered, somebody else's blood ended up in the car that was type B. Yeah, that's a hell of a coincidence. He says, worst possible chain of coincidences, or he was the killer. Yeah, I'll go with it. He was the killer. Now, this is one of the problems with this. What could be wrong with the DNA testing? It points this out. Cutting from the felt portion from the middle of the door panel, okay, the two partial DNA profiles were detected, two partial. One major contributor is an unknown male. The other couldn't be determined. That's it. The problem comes down to this. We do not know how well the chain of custody worked. We do not know whether it was contamination over all those years. So, and things can so everything can just degrade over all those years, so that everything is it's very questionable. And here's the other thing that's also possible is that we don't know if touch DNA was involved. Just because blood is here doesn't mean all these other people that opened the door, put their hands there, could have left DNA there right underneath the blood or on top of the blood, depending on whether they were there before or they were after. There was a guy before who was driving a whole crap load of people around in the car. This is before it was rented to John Carpenter. He was driving a lot of people around, I think, to a wedding or something. So you got a lot of people sitting in there going, "Oh, I got to get my hair done." Then you have some DNA on the door. You could get. There's a million reasons why there could be somebody else's DNA that was touched onto this door that came up in the results. So, to me, yes, it's unfortunate that there wasn't absolute confirmation that this blood belonged to the victim. But on the other hand, there's absolutely no other reason why blood is in John Carpenter's car that just popped up at the exact time that a murder occurred. And every other piece of circumstantial evidence points to John Carpenter. So while John Carpenter's attorney says, "See, he's been exonerated," no, he hasn't. Sorry, he hasn't. Can it be proven he did it at this point? No. Do I believe he did it? Yes. I believe all the evidence points to John Carpenter. And so, yes, I think he did it. And just in general, I think you got two scumbags who are both sex predators who work together as a team to take advantage of women, and I think commit crimes. But I don't believe every one of those women knew they were being videographed and photographed, maybe, because you have to stand there like that. But the videography, I'm not so sure they knew. I don't know how drunk they were, so I don't know if some of them just didn't even know what was going on. I don't know. I'm going to say these guys are criminals. These guys are criminals who were never charged with a crime, because people thought, "Oh, but he's just famous, so the women want to screw him and his friend," and it didn't matter. They all wanted to be they all wanted to be filmed. Okay, fine. You want to believe that? Go ahead. But I think they're scumbags. I think this scumbag killed this scumbag, and just because I think he's a scumbag, doesn't mean he wasn't a good actor. Doesn't mean I couldn't enjoy watching Hogan's Heroes and say, "Wow, he really played a good part." Because there's a great deal of scumbags out there, psychopaths even, who are great authors, musicians. They write operas. There's a lot of great people in the world who I personally do not want to hook up with. But what they might have produced because of their personalities and their abilities might be something quite great. But when people say, "Oh my God, I feel so bad he was murdered," sorry, I'm not on board with that. I really don't give a crap, because I think you're a piece of crap, Bob Crane. But sorry, son, that you want to believe your daddy was wonderful. I'm glad he was good to you, but he was a sex predator. That's my opinion. So, okay, I'm going to go to comments now and some of your questions. All right. Let's see. Good point, Pat. You get it. You get an A. What was the point? I'm not even sure at this point. See how whimsical they look. Well, this is one advantage, by the way. When you play a part and the part you play makes you look like a little angel, it's hard for people to fathom. I mean, I tell you the truth, looking at him here and even looking at him here, he looks like such a clean-cut fellow. I would never suspect this guy was as repulsive as he was. Repulsive man. And that's why I liked autofocus so much, because I'm not saying autofocus is accurate. It's a fictionalized version of this story. But the way they did it showed you how creepy a person could be while they're still smiling and acting like a really nice person. And the way these two and that talked about sex and women, just like it was like going fishing, like doing needlepoint. They talked about it like it was just no big deal. And he even said to people, it's no big deal. That sex is just a normal thing for people. Well, maybe it's normal, but not the way you do it. And not your obsession with the point where you think you have to take pictures and film every single one of them and then sit around jacking off to your porn films that you've made. I'm sorry, dude. That is not normal. That's creepy, man. It wasn't even locker room talk. It was more like, I don't know how to explain it, like everyday talk. Like you were discussing, what do you want for breakfast? I want toast and jam. No, I should just get a blowjob from her. She was good at blowjobs last time. I mean, that film we made was really good. That it was more like that. Now, again, this was fictionalized, but I thought it beautifully brought out the fact that you can have a guy like this and think he is just the most clean cut, decent fellow ever, and he's not. So it's a great learning lesson for people. Um, Ted Bundy was a good looking man. Who could have had many women. Well, he, I don't personally, I'm just going to say Ted Bundy, I never thought was that great looking. But anyway, he was creepy enough that he creeped women out. But he did get a girlfriend. He had that girlfriend who he creeped her out too, which is why she reported her to the police and they didn't believe her, unfortunately. But yeah, there, you can be a good looking person, but inside it can be something completely different. You can say, oh my God, that guy's handsome, and then when you look at him, he just looks at you like a snake, and yeah, it can be creepy. Brian Koberger, he was pretty creepy. That's why he probably was an incel, because he creeped everybody out. Because some, depends again, some people who are psychopathic sex predators have the disrespect they have for human beings, especially women, if that's what they're after, comes across. They don't know how to behave in a proper way, so they come across in a creepy way. Now, he, on the other hand, because he was an actor, he learned more techniques. But even then, some of the statements he made were creepy as heck. As far as his viewpoint again of women and whether he deserved just to have women, and they didn't deserve anything from him. A very one-sided relationship. It's like, oh well, I'm famous, so they should have sex with me, and they don't deserve anything more than that. They're they're getting what they want, which is to have sex with a famous person. What a creep, man. Creep. Needlepoint. Well, just make a nice little flower, and you want to do it? That's like, oh my God, it was gross. That gross is a good word. Let's see, Caliphas. I remember watching Hogan Heroes in the 80s. Could you imagine today they wouldn't have showed it on air after all this? Probably not. Today you get, it probably would not be, he'd be crushed with the Me Too movement. He would absolutely be crushed. And again, the question comes down to, and I pointed out with every time we come across these creepos, being a creep is not illegal. So the Me Too part should only come if you actually have proof that the person committed a crime against you, as opposed to, you went with them because you thought you'd get a part in the movie, that you thought they were, you were entranced by the fact they were famous. I mean, I'm sorry, that's your problem. I don't have a great deal of sympathy for that. I'm sorry. I mean, that's a choice you make. Now, if you get dragged into a back room and get raped, that's a whole nother issue. If you get drugged unknowingly, you're sitting in a bar drinking something, and the next thing you know, you wake up in somebody's room and you only had one drink. Okay, that's you were drugged and raped. If you had 10 drinks and then went to their room and they say, you want some Quaaludes? And you went up to the room to have sex with them, and then you take Quaaludes and you wake up and you go, oh my God, I was raped. Probably not. So in my opinion, creepiness is not illegal. I mean, I don't have any respect for the creeps. And as long as the women went with him willingly, and if they willingly had sex with both of them, and if they willingly allowed them to videotape them while they were doing the different sexual things with them, If they willingly did all that, well, then there's no crime committed. They're just creepy. But if they did things without the permission of the women or got them to the point where they were not aware of what they were doing, then, of course, then you cross that line into criminality. But unfortunately, well, it was never proven while they were alive. So be it. There's no proven crime that he committed or he committed. There just isn't at this point in time. So the family can say, hey, no, they never did anything illegal. Okay, maybe that's true. Maybe it's true. Oh, thank you very much, Clarissa. I'm glad you liked it. It was fascinating because I really didn't remember much about him, and people kept saying, "What about Bob Crane?" And I'm thinking, I did not think this was a story that it turned out to be. I was thinking this might be a stalker story or something else, you know. And I was like, "Whoa, that's interesting." Okay. That's okay. Tina says this. I have a gross theory on the blood in the car. Involves Carpenter's date and her having her period. I thought about that too. By the way, I did. So it's not it's a good theory. It is. Well, you can call it gross if you want to. But is it possible that a person could be, especially if they're drunk? She goes into the bathroom. She changes her tampon pad or whatever. I think back in the 70s. Tampons. They're trying to remember. Okay, tampon pad, whatever. And she gets blood on her fingers and she's drinking. She gets in the car and she's in the passenger side, so she touches things. It's possible. Is it likely? Now, the problem is there is male DNA. And one would have to, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember if they tested all the women for their blood types. From what I know, there was nobody with the same blood type, that same, 1 out of 10 blood type as Bob Crane. So then it wouldn't be her blood regardless. And in theory, it could happen. And here's the thing: if it did happen, let's go with that theory as okay. So that is exactly what happened. Some girl got in his car and put blood on that door. Well, the only difference would be is that he hit him, bludgeoned him, and then didn't the actual tripod didn't leave blood in the car. Okay, he put it in the car, but it didn't leave blood in the car. So then he threw the thing away, and then only the female blood remained that they thought was his blood. In theory, that could be true. Or he didn't do it at all. Some woman left blood in his car, had nothing to do with him, and somebody else killed him and ran off. And of course, that's what the defense attorney will say, that somebody else killed him and he was just the unlucky schmuck, except that everything points to him. All the circumstantial evidence is all over him. And there's no proof that anybody else killed him. And so, yeah. Do I think female blood was left on the door? No, I don't think that's what it was. But I did cross my mind. So there's nothing wrong with coming up with every theory you can. Now, if I were investigating the case myself, if I were working on it, what I want to make sure that every single person was tested for that B blood, because I didn't want that exact scenario happening and I didn't know about it. I think, oh my God, we've been looking for his blood when it really was this woman. Yeah, I would definitely check all those things out. Some of these things we'll never know because too much time has passed, but nothing wrong with the theory at all. Not at all. And I like the fact that I've often talked about these different theories. I just did this recently with the Madeleine McCann case because I had this wonderful fellow who went over to Praia da Luz and looked for Madeleine's body in a location I said was a possibility. I said, not a probability, but a possibility. He didn't find it. And he thought that the ground was too hard. And then he had gotten together and had a little chat with Bernd Stellander, who I do not approve of Bert Stelner's theories. I think are nonsense. But Bert Stelner wrote that 800-page book, and he's not happy with me right now because I did a review of it. But this guy met with Bert, and Bert said, "Hey, will you come out and..." No, did he? No, he didn't ask him to come out. No, he went out to where Bert said that Madeline's body might be, and he went and tried to dig up that area too. And because he was like, well, maybe the body is over here. And he talked with me, and he said, well, what do you think? What did you feel? He really respects me. He's a really nice guy. I think so. He loves my theory. He doesn't like Bernd's theory, but he's like, dude, he felt bad. He's like, am I doing something wrong by going, I'm going and checking out Bernd's theory, or do you think that makes me a bum? Are you sitting there going, why are you checking out Bernd's theory? And I'm like, no, I think you should check out Bernd's theory. There's nothing, Bernd's theory, I don't think it's logical. I don't think it's probable. And I think he's making up a bunch of bull about the McCanns visiting the site on the Roja Negra where her body is buried and putting flowers there and crap. I think that's all nonsense because I don't think they would do that. But do I object to you saying, let's check the theory out? No, because every theory should be, if it's aliens, no. If it's a psychic's theory, no. But if it's a theory where, even Bernd's theory, I was willing to look at Bernd's theory because maybe I had overlooked something. Maybe Bernd had a point. So I'm absolutely willing to look at everybody's theory that at least is looking at evidence and trying to build something from the evidence. I just personally don't agree with Bernd's theory. That's it. But now, if there's no evidence and you're building a theory based on no evidence, I have issues. Now, take a look at, for example, Christian Bruckner. If I were looking at the Madeleine McCann case at the time, the evidence does not point to an abduction. The evidence does not support abduction. The evidence points toward the McCanns, an accidental death and a cover-up. That's where it points to. However, because there's a child sex predator in the area, which Christian Bruckner is, and he's nearby, would I check him out? Absolutely, because, hey, just in case, everything is just some crazy coincidence, and maybe it is Christian Bruckner. Would I check it out as an investigator? Absolutely, because you should, even if nothing more than to eliminate him. But you should checking out. There's nothing wrong. So I appreciate a theory that this could be possibility. Yeah, it could. Let's check it out. So I think that's good. That's a good thing to point out. I like that. So, a couple more comments, and then I'll sign off for tonight. This says, hi Liz, if this happened today, do you think all the circumstantial evidence would hold up better in court? No. Again, I'm not very fond of the citizen jury issue, because you got 12 people. All you need is one person saying, "Oh, I just don't think you did." No, actually, I think too much of it's a crapshoot because we don't have trained people looking at the evidence. But I will say this: if you had a professional jury with somebody like me and a bunch of other people who were trained professionally, would we find John Carpenter guilty? I don't think so. I would. I think the problem is everything weaves him into the picture, but there is not absolute. That's not the kind of circumstantial case which you can say absolutely he committed. I'm trying to think. Somebody throw me a circumstantial case which unquestionably the person's guilty as hell. I'm trying to think of one now, fan. I'm just going to blank here. Because there have been cases where there's no body, but there's enough evidence that absolutely that person is guilty, and you can convict them on circumstantial evidence. Absolutely, circumstantial evidence. A lot of cases are circumstantial evidence, but it has to be solid enough circumstantial evidence where there's just no question. Let's say, for example, I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm just going to blank here. Somebody give me a case. I've got so many cases in my head. Barry. Oh God, I have to remember all the details of the case. Okay. Well, okay, now I'm having trouble. See, the problem I'm having is not that you're not correct when you come up with these different cases, Morphew and uh, Powell. God, I'm trying to remember the details of the case so I could say this is why you could consider all this. The totality of the evidence, again, always the word totality, the totality of the evidence has to be strong enough and convincing enough that there's just no way that the person could not have committed the crime. And I can't think of a good example right now. I can. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, now I forgot the guy's name, but this example to me was one of the best. Okay, so I forgot his name, but I did a show. I did a show on him, I think. Yeah. And so what happened was, um, he was imprisoned for killing a woman, stabbing her to death in her house. And then I think he got out. The Innocence Project rolled through and said he was innocent. And I'm blanking on his name. But anyway, she was stabbed to death at her house with a knife that was there. This guy he had a history of being a burglar. He drives the car, his girlfriend's car, to the bus stop, takes the bus stop to that neighborhood. Then he ends up with the woman's laptop in the trunk of his girlfriend's car. No, wait a minute, not the laptop. No, he takes the woman's laptop. This guy takes the dead woman's laptop to a store to sell it. And then his girlfriend finds the woman's other possessions in the back of her car. I'm going to say that considering where he parked the car and what the bus route was, and the fact he came back and the stuff is there. Now, they tried to claim that his girlfriend set him up, and it was ludicrous. There was more to the story, but that's circumstantial evidence. Which he has the dead woman's laptop. He's selling it, and he's got the woman's items in the trunk of the car he was driving to the bus stop. And so there's a bunch of other things as well. But that's a good circumstantial case. He got convicted on it, and he should have been convicted on it. And so that's pretty good proof. Now, in this case with him, if he doesn't have the murder weapon, we don't even know that he went over to the actual apartment. Now, if there was a camera on the street and we see his car going toward the apartment, and then an hour passes and the car goes away from the apartment, now you're getting better circumstantial evidence that where was he during that hour? He clearly was at the apartment. Now he lies about being at the apartment, but clearly he was at the apartment. So there's that. So different things. He's the tripod disappears, but he sells a tripod like that tripod in California at a pawn shop. You see, those kind of things. You put all that together, you'd have way more. But there wasn't that kind of stuff, unfortunately. So if I were on a jury, I'd have to say all the the motive is his, but motive is you can't convict somebody because they got a motive. I can't prove he was there. I can say that it's likely that he knew who knocked on the door, and there was only somebody who would knock on the door at 2:00 in the morning, except for this guy, whatever. He's lying all over the place. There's no question he's lying all over the place, but is that enough to prove it? And I would say no. So that sucks, but it's true. I'm trying to see some more. Yeah, I'd say, unfortunately, I have so many. Some people wonder why I can't just come up a lot of times with names and all the evidence and stuff. It's because I've done so many cases. I have to go back and review the case and actually look at my own videos to remember what the hell I said. So that's that guy who had the computer in the car. I forgot his name now. Just don't remember. Yeah. Well, that's what I just said. There's circumstantial evidence is there. He had the motive, the last person to have seen him. He's the person he would open the door to. He picking up a tripod would be second nature to him. He would know the layout of the house. He was sleeping while the killer was in there with him, which had to be somebody he trusted. He didn't know, the place wasn't ransacked. It wasn't a robbery. The person wasn't looking for anything. Um, and then he has no alibi. And the next thing you know is he's making these phone calls, pretending he doesn't know what happened to him and doesn't ask any of the reasonable questions. That's a lot of circumstantial evidence, but is it enough for conviction? And that's the problem. And there's blood in his vehicle, but now they can't prove who the blood belongs to. So the blood, to me, and if that brain stuff was, if they didn't lose that would have nailed it. I mean, because even if they couldn't prove it was his brain matter, who drives around and says, "Oh man, I don't know why this brain matter's in my car. It must have flown in." If you've got brain matter in your car, probably just killed somebody. If the brain matter had been proven, as opposed to the picture, they would have nailed him in a heartbeat. Absolutely. And do I think the brain matter was there? Yeah, I do. I just think they screwed up. Somebody said that they probably didn't think it was testable or something. Oh, what's this? Well, I have no idea. But yeah, that would have clinched the case, unquestionably. This is a good point about the circumstantial evidence. That's not a bad choice on Richard Allen and the Delphi case. Yes, the bullet matched his gun and this ammo that he would use, but he couldn't prove that it was actually his ammo. He did put himself on the bridge at the time it went down. And then there were other reasons too. And then his confessions didn't help him out any, and a bunch of other stuff. Okay. So that was a circumstantial case. And a lot of people thought that was a weak circumstantial case and he should not have been convicted. I believe it was a good enough circumstantial case to be convicted, but some people did not. I always said, I think he's got a great chance on an appeal. I do, unfortunately, but very good, Caitlin. I like that. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Clicking on the wrong things here. Lord. Again, this is good circumstantial evidence. Same make does not make absolute proof. Okay, that's the problem. And that's what the defense attorney will say. Well, just because he's got one that's a similar make, it doesn't mean it was from the same box. Now, if you could prove it was from the exact same box of ammo, then you'd have something. Then you'd have absolute, what you would call direct evidence, as opposed to circumstantial evidence, indirect. So direct evidence is much more convincing to juries and to any jury, professional or civilian, than circumstantial evidence or indirect evidence. It just is. I mean, that's why DNA is so important to so many people, because if the DNA is there, they believe then the person absolutely did it. Although sometimes that's not true when it comes to touch DNA, gets a little shaky. So yeah, that is a good point, Sarah. Nothing is absolute. And yeah, and the problem we have a lot of times is that in a world that wants absoluteness, the problem people have in civilian juries with the totality of evidence is they often will say, even if 99 pieces match this guy, there's the one piece I can't explain, I'm going to let him go. And that's not the way it works, but that is the way sometimes civilian juries do it. It's like the OJ case. One thing bothered them. Of all the things that I absolutely said, and same thing, Casey Anthony, good God Almighty, there was no reason not to convict her, except they thought maybe this actually happened. No, there's no proof that actually happened. But somebody presented it and you thought it was possible. And you ignored all the evidence that there was, which was overwhelming. And the OJ case and the Casey Anthony case were two times when I remember being shocked by the verdict. Other ones I'm like, well, I will see how this works out. Karen Reed right now, it's a crapshoot. Personally, I think she's guilty. I think the evidence is strong. I think that there's no massive conspiracy. The massive conspiracy stuff is ridiculous. But I see what people are focused on. They are focused on mostly the marks on the arm and they're ignoring every other shred of evidence. And they're building conspiracy theories to explain all the other evidence away. And that's what I think. So I think in the court, I think the second round has been stronger than the first round as far as the Karen Reed case goes. But I don't know which way the jury's going to go. And I think, as many people point out, maybe she was overcharged, and that may be true. If you wanted to make it easier, maybe you shouldn't have made the charge that they made. Maybe it should have gone with manslaughter. So, but I don't want to get into the whole Karen Reed case because that gets very nasty, and people they can't seem to control themselves. They disagree, and then they say bad names. And but the understanding of how evidence works and how crime works and how criminals work is a lot of times not really understood by unless you've been in the field for a long time and you say, okay, I know how this stuff goes down. Otherwise, you may not be aware of that. And again, I don't blame any of the jurors. Any juror that is forced by the government to go work for free, essentially, to have to deal with what they have to deal with. I feel sorry for every juror who's ever brought in there. I think it's horrific. I don't agree with it. They take them out of their real lives. They put them in having to watch tragic stuff that gives them PTSD, stuff that some of them can't emotionally handle, and they have no training. And I just think it's horrific. I think it's really sad. And so I'm against it morally as well as professionally. But anyway, I'll stop. I'll get off that little. Get off my soapbox on that. Anyway, so that's it. I'm going to stop here. All right. So thank you very much for being here. This was really a fascinating case. Again, I love it when you recommend things to me because a lot of things I haven't even heard of or never, haven't thought about. And I'm fascinated when I end up looking at it because, that's what I love about criminal profiling. I love crime scene analysis. That's my thing. So when I get a case that's really fascinating, I'm always appreciative. And again, I just want to say I'll put the links below. And this time I said I'm surprised that I thought all these three things were excellent. The movie, which is $3.99 on YouTube or also on Prime Video. This is free. The documentary, I think, is extremely well done, and you get to hear about from all the people. And this book is very, very good. And we bought it, of course, at Amazon or any place else. There, I think, Graysmith. I think he did one too, but it's only in. You have to buy. There's no Kindle copy, so that's why I didn't get it. But I liked his book. I did, except for the thing where he's going. They thinks that women just went along with the program. And it's a sex addiction. I disagree with him on that. But other than that, I thought it was a really well-written book and really well thought through. And I liked all three of these things. How about that? How unusual is that? But anyway, thank you for being here. If you are a patron on the channel, I'll be doing the Hangout this week. That's the second of the things I do live. That'll be on Thursday. I think it's going to be Thursday evening. So sorry about you folks in the UK and Europe. I know it sucks when it's evening. And for people who are in New Zealand and Australia, it's not fun for them when it's 3:00 in the afternoon at my time, because then it's like 5:00 in the morning for them. So can't please everybody every time. So I try to do enough. I try to vary it enough that there's some opportunities for people. But again, you're always welcome to be part of the Patreon community. Link below. Supports an educational channel. And so, yes, I will see you guys on Thursday. And thank you for being here on Tuesday night, because usually this is a weekend case, but I had to go see Lilo and Stitch with my granddaughter, and so we all went out to lunch, and then the girls went shopping at the mall, which was so boring. I worked on this case. I just went over and let the girls walk around with my daughter for like an hour and a half, and I worked on this case. And then we hooked back up and we went to the theater and we saw Lilo and Stitch, and I will say I preferred the cartoon version, but it was a nice outing with the family. So that's why I didn't do it on Sunday. So, but I will be back this weekend for the more normal day. So thank you guys for being here. You're all wonderful. I like having you here. I like doing live shows because it makes me feel not so alone when I do these things. Just doing videos is not always that much fun, Staring into a camera and nobody's on the other end. Anyway, thank you for being here, guys. See you soon. Bye.